Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. This is episode 5 of the Groovy Podcast with me, Peter Lebrook. Today is the 21st of January, 2015, the first podcast of the year. And it's certainly been a while since the last podcast we had. Don't worry, this isn't going to be a one-off. I do hope to continue with more regular podcasts, so keep an eye out for future ones. So, of course, the big news currently is the pivotal announcement that they will no longer be sponsoring the Groovy and Grails projects as of the beginning of April. So I'm happy and grateful that Guillaume Laforge and Graeme Rocher, the leads of the two projects, have agreed to join me and have a chat about that. So hi guys, thanks for joining me.
Hello Peter, hello everybody. Hello. Happy to join you there.
And so if you've never met them, you get to see what they look like in real life, or at least by video. So before we go into that interview, I'd just like to run through a few news items that have caught my interest in the last month or two. And I'm sure my interviewees will join in and step in if I get anything wrong. So Groovy 2.4 is in release candidate stage, and this is the big one with proper Android support. Is that not correct, Guillaume?
Yeah, exactly. That's the big highlight, and we're actually trying to make the release, the final release, even today already, but we're facing some issues with the deployment, so it might be delayed a little bit. We'll see. But it might be today, even live during the podcast.
Well, you've set yourself up for now, so you heard it here first, folks. Groovy 2.4 final out during this podcast. Fingers crossed. But soon, anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And if the stuff that Graeme showed at the Groovy and Grails Exchange at the end of last year is anything to go by, Grails 3 is progressing nicely. I don't believe there are any milestone releases as of yet, but Graeme, is there anything on the horizon? Is anything out yet?
Yes, the only thing really holding up a milestone right now is that we are waiting for a stable release of, well, a release candidate of Grails 2.3. And I believe that's supposed to hit very soon, either this week or next. So as soon as that is out, we can then issue a milestone.
Okay, that's great news because next item, Gradle 2.3 is due to enter RC tomorrow, the 22nd of January, according to the developer mailing list. So fingers crossed that will come out tomorrow, which means that a milestone release of Grails 3 will pop out shortly afterwards. Similar to in another news item with respect to Groovy and Android, there's been a Swiss Knife release 1.2.1. So Swiss Knife is a little project, a little library that introduces view injection and threading into your Android app. It's based on a couple of Java-only libraries called Butterknife and Android Automation. So it's already reached 1.2.1. So sorry, I've just seen that we have an extra guest who we may see later.
This is Maya, my daughter.
Hello. Yes, no problem. So Swiss Knife 1.2.1, it's great to see members of the community jumping onto the whole Groovy and Android thing. And hopefully we'll discuss that a little bit in the interview as well. And finally, the first Grails conference, I believe, in India happened this month. So GrailsConf, I can't remember where it was, but it was earlier this month, and apparently that went with great success. So it's great to hear more conferences appearing in other parts of the world other than just like the US and Europe is where most of them are focused that I'm familiar with. So great to have another one on the circuit elsewhere in the world. Speaking of conferences, specific Groovy and Grails ones coming up, there is Greach in Spain. That used to be generally around the February time, but that's actually going to be 9th to the 11th of April this year. Spring I.O. that includes Groovy and Grails related content. That will be the 29th to the 30th of April. Then we go on to GreatConf EU in Copenhagen. That will be 2nd to the 4th of June. Gradle will be having the second year of their Gradle Summit, and that will be 11th to 12th of June, and I believe that will be in Silicon Valley once again, so California. And finally, GreatConf US, 29th to the 31st of July, and I assume still in Minneapolis. Okay, so, and we're not too sure. We hope there will be a Spring 1.2 GX. No announcements, no dates yet, other than that it will be in Washington, DC. Okay, and of course, don't forget there will be Groovy-related content at many of the Java conferences as well, such as DevOps France and DevOps UK, and all the others that are coming around this year. Now, on to the interview. So, Guillaume, Graeme, thanks once again for coming on the show. First and foremost, my sympathies go out to everyone on your teams. I imagine you're dealing with a fair bit of uncertainty at the moment about your futures. And I have to say, like, regardless of what else happens, I do hope you will find new homes pretty soon, and I would be amazed if that doesn't happen. You're all talented guys, so there'll be definitely people wanting to pick you up. I guess the big question is in what form that happens, like who will be doing it and how many of each team, etc. So we'll come to the actual pivotal decision shortly. But first, what have your highlights been from the last year with respect to like Groovy, Grails, JVM ecosystem and such like? Guillaume first.
Yeah. So, wow, where to start? I guess at least for Groovy, that's been the the 2.3 release and all the refinements which came with it. I think that was probably the biggest highlight for us there.
So was that the traits release or was 2.2 traits?
I think that was already 2.2. Now you make me hesitate. I have to double check. No. Yeah. So what did we add in that one? Good question. With all those releases, after a while, you start to forget what you put in them. I think that was the traits.
I am just the same. Like every new version, it's like, okay, what did that feature come in?
No, the real key feature were the traits. We had the JDK8 support, at least running on JDK8 and being able to use lambda expressions. Well, closures wherever lambda expressions were needed. We had some new HT transformations like tail recursive, the builder @builder transformation. What else? The super fast JSON support. And well, I think it was a pretty busy release, and I know there were many more items, but they kind of escaped me. These are really the biggest ones. And otherwise, all the ongoing conferences like GreatConf, Spring 1.2 GX, etc. That's always been pretty busy, and always nice to meet the community, our users everywhere. That's always the big highlight for me, humanly wise. I mean, when you're working from home.
And I think everyone that comes appreciates meeting people in the flesh and having photos taken with you and all that stuff. It's great fun.
Yeah, true. And beside that, the Java 8 related release, all the things around the Stream API, etc. That's the big stuff in the Java world these days, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about the Stream API, and I did that blog post on Groovy and Java 8 and how they interact. But I'm interested, like, what was your opinion on the Stream API as to if you're on Java 8, should you be using the Stream API or the old Collections API with the Groovy JDK?
Mm-hmm. Well,
assuming we're using Groovy in both cases.
Yeah, right. I think it depends on what kind of computation you are doing. There are many very useful methods in the GDK which offer, I don't know, things like what else could I take? There are very useful methods. Now I'm losing what I wanted to say. There are very useful methods for doing, let's say, permutations or combinations and things like that you won't be finding on the Stream API. So there are certain things, certain convenient methods which are basically not available with JDK8 Stream API. So you might prefer using directly what Groovy offers in that case. But for other convenience methods like group by, there are ways to do grouping with the Stream API. And then if performance really matters, the thing, so it's not so much about the raw performance of the language rather than the way the Java 8 stream pipeline has been built, which is how it kind of builds up the pipeline and only do one traversal of the whole collection or stream to build up the final result, whereas by default, with most methods in the JDK, we tend to create intermediary collections in between, which might be expensive memory-wise, etc. Unless you are using the iterator variants of those methods, but we don't have them for all the convenience methods that we have. So in those cases, it might be just better or simpler to use the Stream API directly if you don't really depend on the key convenience methods offered by Groovy. So for small, medium collections, just go with what Groovy offers if performance doesn't matter. But for huge collections, especially if you've got many steps, the pipeline approach offered by the Stream API might be better than in terms of performance.
Yeah, certainly the lazy aspect of the Streams API is a good strength of that. To be honest, I personally like the naming of the methods as well. I understand map better than I understand collect and things like that. But, so I mean that could be the a source for another blog post actually. Which one to use. Obviously, a lot of considerations. So, yeah, that's cool stuff. Okay, thanks, Guillaume. And Graeme, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, 2014 was a big year. On the Groovy side, I'm just going to comment on the Groovy side. It's been incredible to see really Groovy grow as an ecosystem, and that's been the most impressive thing for me in 2014. Projects like Grails being adopted by Android and as the Android build system and really taking off and gaining in popularity. Speaking of Android, then Groovy allowing the construction of Android applications as well, which is coming to a head now with the Groovy 2.4 release. And the rest of the ecosystem in terms of like Ratpack and things like Reactor embracing Groovy. And Spring Boot, Spring Boot, the Groovy integration is fantastic, which in some sense just makes it even more unfortunate in the situation we're in, because Spring Boot is really embraced Groovy in a big way. And then on the Grails side, obviously, we did a Grails 2.4, which was a big release this year, but since then we've really been plunged headfirst into Grails 3, and there's a lot of excitement about where we're going. There's been great feedback on my presentations on that, so we're really excited about that. As a general industry, it's in terms of the year, it's been interesting to see where things are going around microservices, cloud. And kind of real-time APIs, and that's certainly an area we're exploring.
Yeah, cool. I mean, it is a lot of change. Always seems to be every year. To be honest, I'm feeling a little bit old for these things. It's like, how many more new things do I have to learn? But yes, it's like, hopefully we can narrow and focus on some of the longer-term ones, the ones that are going to survive. From my perspective, like one of the biggest news items was the announcement by the New York Times that one of their teams was using Groovy for an Android application. So the fact that a team had jumped on, I guess a fairly high-profile team had jumped onto Groovy as an option for Android development so quickly.
That's been really pleasing, and you mentioned the New York Times adopting Groovy for Android very quickly. The same kind of thing can be said with Google adopting Groovy with Grails as the build system as well. So there's been a lot of big examples of things like that happening in 2014. So we're hoping that will continue, and I think that Groovy 2.4's Android support is going to be a really big deal.
Yes, hopefully so. I mean, it definitely looks like there's a lot of appetite for something other than, being able to program in something other than Java for the Android stuff, without going too far away from the syntax that people are used to. So, while I was at VMware, I have to admit that Spring, Groovy, and Grails didn't feel like they felt like a bit of an odd fit within the company. So, did the Pivotal spin-off give you hope for a better story as far as Groovy and Grails go? I certainly had high hopes.
There was initial positivity, especially with the focus around. You got to remember that Cloud Foundry, the product, originally came from Spring Source. So with the refocus around Cloud Foundry. Obviously the product is very different from what the product it was at Spring Source. Cloud Foundry at Spring Source was a very different product to it is today. But it kind of came to VMware and Pivotal by that direction. So when we were spun off into Pivotal with the focus around Cloud Foundry, there was certainly a renewed hope and focus around the company. I think the period at VMware was, as you said, it was difficult in terms of what was Spring Source finding its fit within the organization, there was certainly that renewed hope at the beginning.
Do you want to add anything, Guillaume?
No. Right. What?
So this was the transition to Pivotal, and whether you felt that I felt that there was a good chance for a better focus on Groovy and Grails within that organization than VMware. But
the more software focus, at least for me, I felt that this software focus made more sense compared to virtualization and all that kind of things. So I found that Groovy and Grails would be a better fit there than they were for Pivotal before VMware before. But you never know. If you refocus your energy on some particular aspect, product, technology, others maybe no, they are less of a good fit. So
certainly, if you look at the original motivation that VMware had around the acquisition of Spring Source, it was so that they could have a developer audience that drove developers towards a cloud platform. As it happened at VMware, that cloud platform wasn't completely ironed out, and as it happens at Pivotal, that cloud platform is maturing, and that is Cloud Foundry. It's a maturing platform. But for whatever reason, Pivotal, maybe through differing management or whatever, feel that they don't need a developer audience as much for Cloud Foundry as VMware thought. Hence, or at least they don't need the Groovy and Grails audience. Even though we were driving developers towards the platform, a significant number of applications deployed with Cloud Foundry were Grails applications. I guess they have other avenues to attract those developers.
And there's also something that might be interesting in mentioning. That's how it's a wider debate around open source, but how do you see the investment? Is it an investment that companies are making in open source, like you invest in something to gain something in return, like developer mind share, which is not necessarily something measurable, like direct revenue in terms of dollars, versus is it just a cost center? Is it just a spending? Sometimes it's perhaps also the view of companies that might be changing with regards to what those guys that are paid for developing open source stuff. Perhaps
certainly,
that view might
certainly,
change.
certainly, if you look at VMware, there was a big conflict of in that VMware were very much a product company, not an open source company. So they had a hard time understanding, this investment in open source. We don't have a product that we're selling, so how does this work? And there was conflict about that. And certainly, in order to have a successful open source business, you need to understand that in order to attract an audience, community, you need a certain amount of investment in open source. Once you have a community and an audience, then you can introduce commercial products that monetize that audience. When we were just Spring Source, that, for example, was TC Server. Obviously, things changed as we transitioned through to Pivotal. So that's the idea: is building a community, building an audience, and then selling add-ons or commercial products to that audience that convince that audience of their value. And that model is known to work. If you look at companies like MongoDB, who sell an enterprise version of MongoDB, or companies like Elasticsearch that provide all sorts of products and infrastructure around the Elasticsearch, that model is known to work. But obviously, you have to be very focused on that audience. And I think historically, VMware and Pivotal haven't paid a huge amount of attention to the Groovy on Grails audience, which I hope would change with the new sponsor.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, there are different ways that you can make money out of open source. Like Oracle, Oracle's an interesting one because they took over Java. So that's taking over a language, languages are notoriously hard to make money off directly. But they also saw it as critical to their own paid-for services, their Fusion at the time when I think they first when they first took over Java. But then again, as you say, 10gen, or are they called MongoDB now? Productizing their system so that they can sell something that is suitable for those people who have like business critical systems where they need extra reliability or what have you. Juk was another one. There was a blog post from a Juk guy who was talking about the whole Groovy and Grails situation and Pivotal. Their approach is to dual license the SQL library called Juk. That can work. And of course, in the past, others have used consulting and support on top of these things.
Yeah, that's when this discussion happened on Twitter recently. You can have a good business with a consulting and services and training oriented business around the open source offering. You can have a good business that does that. As it happens, Pivotal are targeting an IPO, and for them, an IPO is obviously a different level of revenue and so on, which is probably not achievable in a pure consulting services organization. They have different goals. So,
so you think that that they couldn't find a fit for Groovy and Grails, but they have found a fit for Spring, because it seems they're keeping Spring, at least for the moment.
At least for now.
Yeah. So, I mean, is it all Spring projects, or are they focused on like Spring Cloud, perhaps Spring XD, big data? Maybe their focus is big data. I'm not sure.
I think the Spring team are doing a phenomenal job, and creating innovative, great products. And I think because they're a larger team, the Spring team are a much larger team than the Groovy and Grails team. They were able to branch out and create products like Spring Cloud, like Spring Cloud that really resonated with the rest of the organization. And if I look back and think of a mistake that we made or were not able to achieve because of resourcing, is we as a team did not create those same products that resonated with Cloud Foundry and the rest of Pivotal. But it's a very hard thing to do, creating something like Spring Cloud, or when you're a team as small as we are.
Yeah. Okay, so that's like in the past now. So looking to the future, it does seem that ideally you'd like a single sponsor to effectively take over both teams and effectively let you continue heavy development of the two projects. Are you fairly optimistic that might still happen? And if so, what sort of company do you think might take up the challenge? And I know Stefan from Devox, he tweeted he was betting on Red Hat.
So we're optimistic, obviously. We have to be, and discussions are ongoing, and with a number of different companies. Obviously, none of that I can necessarily talk about, but we're optimistic in securing funding. But it'll probably reach a point there where we have to consider several different avenues. So whether it be a single new sponsor or starting a new company altogether, all of the options there's several options in front of us. So we'll see how it pans out over the next few months.
But at least as of today, it's obviously a bit too early to say anything, or we don't have any definitive plan in mind, and we're pretty open to suggestions. And what's pretty almost overwhelming is the number of companies, individuals, etc., who replied to us and offered help. Some even personal money and things like that. That's pretty amazing. The kind of support we've received, and that's something I wanted to highlight. That I'm always amazed by the very friendly community that we have around the project that we've managed to gather over the years, and I would really like to thank them for that and for helping us whatever the solution we'll find ultimately. That's really heartwarming, basically.
Yeah, it's as Ken Cousins said, it's a very warm community and very open. Speaking of that, like somebody suggested crowdfunding at one point. So what other avenues are you considering? The plans B, C, and D, if you like. Do you have any particular ideas, or how the teams may split up to make it easier to pick up? Or would we see the return of G2.1?
Yeah, but
we can't rule out any possibility.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it may be that it's not realistic for. We understand it's a large investment to take on 6 people for many companies. So and we're realistic about it as well. So. We are exploring every single possibility we can. There are many on the table, including creating a new GT1, if you want to call it that, including crowdfunding potentially, including a new sponsor, there's a whole variety of outcomes that could materialize. It's just too early to say which one will be at this stage.
Okay. Well, I'm going to call that Google might be interested in the whole Groovy side of things. Definitely, they may be looking for a Swift-like variant for Android. I don't know how their whole relationship with Oracle is going, so I don't know whether Java 8 will hit Android anytime soon. So anyway, that's the one I'm going to call. But it's great to hear that there are discussions in the works. And I mean, you've mentioned the community, and a lot have been saying they'd really like to do stuff. So have you given any thoughts to what members of the community can do to help?
I mean, I think in terms of infrastructure, etc., we are doesn't cost all that much, and we've got pretty much things of all the things in hands. So it's not really there's not much help there that we need for now, at least. But I think it's still more about spreading the word, continuing using our technologies, etc., reassuring people that Groovy and Grails won't die anytime soon, and they will live on whatever the future may be. If it's a new big company getting us all on board, etc. So it's perhaps more even just the fact of saying Groovy and Grails have been there before, being fully funded, and if you go back in time, Groovy 1.0 has been done just on our spare time, basically, and we went pretty far with that already. That's how people can probably also help us spread the word, continue advocating Groovy and Grails, and that's already a great first step, I think.
So, I mean, I was thinking success stories, something like that, so you have a nice portfolio of...
Yeah, that could help too. At some point in the new Groovy website, for instance, I'd like to find a place, I'm not sure quite where yet in the new structure, but I'd like to be able to offer kind of case studies or something like that, or testimonials. That would be nice, and it would be nice to put that on.
One thing that's been incredible is in terms of the response to the announcement has been the number of people coming out and saying, "Oh, we use Groovy, and we have X amount of Groovy and Grails or Groovy Grails engineers, and we created this product with Groovy." And unfortunately, in the real world, not many people actually blog or talk about these things, the products that they built. And if you're a Groovy and Grails user and want to support the community, that's a great way to do it. Just talk about your experiences with Groovy and Grails, talk about what you did at work with it. Promote the language and the framework.
Yeah, cool. So there you go, community. A few suggestions to come and help out the projects. So I just want to finish and ask what your aims are for the two projects, as you lead up to Groovy 3. I don't know whether there'll be a 2.5 or not, and Grails 3.
Yeah, we might actually be doing Groovy 2.5. There's always this big set, or not big set, small set of big highlights of what Groovy 3 will be about, like the new mob, etc. And we're kind of came to the conclusion that a big bang new mob is really too difficult to come up with, so it might be something more incremental. So perhaps we'll be putting some of those ideas that we've had for the new mob progressively in dot releases, not necessarily in a big 3.0 release. So there may well be a 2.5, 2.6 or something like that. At least a 2.5 is likely, I would say. And then a 3.0 might be when we enable the new grammar, because we never know if some corner cases might not be caught. Or normally, I mean, it's still the same Groovy syntax, obviously, but you never know with a new parser, etc. If it breaks some AST transformations because they tree structure slightly changes or something. So perhaps the 3.0 moniker might be for something like that. But otherwise, that's still pretty much the plan. The new mob, the new grammar implementation. What else? On the big thing, which likely requires the new grammar as well, is the some of the Java 8 features in terms of syntax that we'd like to add. Because it might be, supporting like the new keywords, well, not keyword, but on the interface having static methods and default methods. So you have to support default there, etc. Or whether we should be supporting the colon notation for the colon notation for the method references, although we also have our own. So it's actually some discussion that will be also launching pretty soon on the Groovy mailing list, so as to gather some feedback on what our users, our key members of the community think about certain decisions regarding what we should be supporting or not, or how we should be supporting that. So yeah, that's the main aspects for Groovy 2.5 and beyond at this point, and continuing as well the Android support and bug fixing and so on. But that's pretty obvious, I would say.
Yeah, and Grails 3.
Yeah, so on the Grails 3 side, we are obviously focused on going GA with Grails 3, and I think that'll be a big deal because it's a significant re-architecture of the framework, and we made it possible to migrate plugins, through package renaming and so on and so forth. And I expect a number of the plugin community to really rally around that, or at least I hope the plugin community will really rally around it. And then, there's a significant amount that we can build on with Grails 3 because of the profile support. We've opened up a huge number of possibilities because now it's, not just possible for Grails to be able to build a servlet targeting web application. You could create a profile for building a Netty application or a Ratpack application, or there's all sorts of potential around that area that we're pretty excited about, and hope the community will jump on as well.
So, how would you summarize Grails 3? The elevate. I hate the term elevator pitch, but the core essence of what it's trying to do for people.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's we're trying to correct a lot of past mistakes in terms of the new Gradle build is phenomenal. So if the Gradle, it provides a structure and a robustness that we didn't have before, and with just the same amount of flexibility and ability to extend, and basically unlocks the whole Gradle ecosystem for the Grails developer. And then the profile support, of course, is extremely important because now it's suddenly possible to create plugins and applications that potentially target a range of different environments. And we see that it's really going to unlock the potential of Grails in terms of creating microservice applications. Be much easier because it's built on top of Spring Boot, quickly spin up a Grails application just by running the static void main class, or the creation of runnable jar files, container-free deployment, and so on. So there's a huge amount of potential in there.
So is it, the kind of terms that come to mind at the moment are, it's still trying to be a rapid application development framework, as it was before, like using conventions heavily, but with much more control over what actually goes into your application, and of course being able to support lots of different types of application. There's the standard CRUD MVC thing plus others. like the newer Rat-Pack style streaming, reactive streams, and that kind of thing.
Absolutely, and I can foresee, we had a lot of discussions with about Griffin using the same API to build a Swing application using the same infrastructure. That is actually now possible. A little bit too late because Andres has gone off and forked the code base and hit it off in a different direction. But if Griffin was created today, you could create a profile for creating Swing applications, for example. There's all sorts of possibilities there.
So I think there could be a lot of excitement built up around the Grails 3 release. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses and what the community comes up with. Anyway, so great. Thanks very much, guys, for coming on. We do have a question here from the audience. When will the current Groovy website be replaced with beta.groovylang.org? Now, I thought it already was, because if you go to www.groovylang.org, that is the website.
Yeah, true, but the old groovy.codehouse.org website is still up, and actually so it's not totally public, but not totally top secret either. It seems that Codehouse will actually shut down in a month from now, so the old Groovy website will definitely be gone in a month.
So Codehouse itself.
Sorry.
Codehouse, the organization.
Yeah, Codehouse, yeah. With all its projects, so all the mailing list, Jira instances, everything will have to go actually, and be migrated by let's say mid February, something like that. So it'll have to be live. The new website will definitely have to be live in less than a month from now. So we already use the website for things like downloads, etc. But we haven't really switched completely because there are still holes that we'd like to fill in terms of documentation. But perhaps we won't have filled wrote this missing documentation. And we also noticed that when Codehouse had some outage in terms of infrastructure, we redirected the traffic to the new website. And we noticed that people are really Google searchers. When they search for something, they actually don't even use the search feature of the website. So they just hit Google and, oh, it's leading to the main page of the new website. I can't find the information. Which made us realize that we really need to put in place a redirect from some old URLs to new ones. And there are some of the very frequently accessed URLs and pages of the old website for which we don't have equivalent content or documentation or web page in the new website. So we're going to try at least to fill the gaps there before making the switch in a month maximum. And one last thing I wanted to mention before we leave is that although I haven't made the announcement yet because we're recording and we're live on the podcast, but the release of 2.4.0 is now available. So you just need to wait a little bit for the official announcement, but I can say live in this podcast that 2.4.0 is available.
Excellent, great news. So if you're listening to this live, you can go straight to the Groovy website, and once that should be showing the 2.40 links now or shortly.
Oh, you can, but I'll be publishing. Actually, I can already give you the link if you want the release notes. I'm putting it in the chat area. Release notes. So this is the link you can use for the release notes. That's what I'm going to announce, basically, for people who want to have a look at the new features, the tickets closed, etc.
I noticed that's a Codehouse link.
Yeah, because we haven't migrated the release notes on the new website either. So we'll need to find a suitable place for the release notes and also to migrate the old release notes. That's something I'll be doing in the coming week or so.
Yes, I have to say, having handled helping with the migration from Codehouse to the Grails website, making sure that all the old stuff was available, would link to the new stuff, that was challenging.
Yeah.
But I am one of these people that will just Google search for everything, even if I know even if I know which website has the information, I will just Google it first. It's so much easier.
So easy.
Okay, so thank you. So. couple more things. So one of the audience, Donald Murtagh, mentioned that there is a Groovy Streams library by Tim Yates. So that gives you the best of both worlds, the lazy stream API, but with some of the benefits of the Groovy additions to the Collections API. And finally, I just wanted to give a shout out, because Graeme brought up a classic Cloud Foundry, the one that SpringSource originally bought into the fold. That was started by Chris Richardson, whose birthday is today. So happy birthday, Chris Richardson.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
So happy birthday, Chris. Okay, once more, thanks very much to Guillaume and Graeme for joining me, and I hope to catch everyone else, all my listeners, next time in maybe a couple of weeks' time. So goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.